Greetings Internet, DDA here, and welcome to my updated Black Devious Trunks Sword Beatdown List 3.0. Now I'm really excited about this list, guys, because it's actually the first deck that I've ever successfully top-cutted in the Panini card game. So I'm excited to show you guys this list, and hopefully that you can find the same success with it that I did. So let's just scan over the list real quick, and you'll see that this is an actual Trunks Sword deck, you know, a lot different from the previous decks that I was calling sword decks, which only really ran a very small number of sword cards. But this is a true sword deck because of the new Vengeance level 1. And it's just a super fun combo deck to play. So if you like combos, doing a lot of actions, then this is the deck for you. So now let's talk about the attacks. So now let's go over the attacks here. So as you can see, like I said, this is a true sword deck. We have actually 9 sword attacks. Trunks Sword Slash is pretty standard. You know, it's one of the strongest attacks in the deck, AT plus 4, and it has great banishing attached to it. You're really not going to use the hit effect. There is a great effect that we'll go over later that this attack can actually become unpreventable with the aggressive swordplay drill in play. Black Sword Attack is the sword that Black got in the Vengeance set, and this card just brought this deck to a whole new level. Because most of the sword cards, you know, both of these sword cards are actually banished after use, but this one is not. So you can actually cycle it with Dashing Sword Attack. So you can do this, do Dashing Sword Attack to tutor this into your hand, then do this again. And since it actually gains you in anger, you can chain this card to gain some levels. This deck doesn't gain too much anger, but it does have enough anger in it to raise to level 2 or 1 level, you know, maybe in about 20% of the games. Usually you can raise a level if you want. It also has a really sexy immediate effect on here that you may banish 2 cards with sword in the title from your discard pile to return a setup or drill in play to its owner's hand. So if you watch my previous videos, you know this deck has a problem with board control. You can play an orange deck. Traditionally, orange decks are sometimes a hard counter to black decks. But you can face an orange deck with this, throw out Black Sword Attack, bounce their Burning Ore Drill into their hand so they can't use it, bounce their Hiding Drill into their hand so your Mastery will hit for life cards again. Just great, all-around solid bread and butter. You're probably not going to want to banish this card for Endurance too often, but it is nice sitting at Endurance 2. Dashing Sword Attack is literally the greatest attack in this deck. It is the whole engine for this deck. It'll allow you to do some sick combos, you know, be able to do 5 attacks in a single combat pretty easily. I try to make sure that I use all 3 of my Dashing Sword Attacks every game. Black Defensive Burst is pretty much, you know, I'm sure that some people would agree to say that this physical attack is one of the best physical attacks in the meta right now because Brawly and Android 13 are running extremely rampant. Android 13 having a physical attack on every single level. So Defensive Burst goes a long way to curb those decks, and you can actually cycle it, which I'll go over later with the Trunks level 1. Black Enraged Assault's really solid. I guess you could say this is kind of like my aggressive Black Scout maneuver in this deck. I felt Black Scout Maneuver is a little bit slow for this deck, so I like the Enraged Assault because it's an attack with a hit effect I can use to bait out blocks for my Dashing Sword Attack. And, you know, Defensive Burst as well. Like, I have other hit effect attacks to bait out blocks so I can make sure I hit my Dashing Sword. Black Chin Kicks at 3 copies. Allies are a bit of a problem for this deck, and Black Chin Kick's just amazing. It just blanks the allies. So, you know, you don't have to worry about any allies they bring into play. It also can raise you anger and gain levels for you if it hits. So this is another card that I can actually level with. Android Armbreaker at 3 copies. 3 endurance is amazing. Plus this actually packs a pretty hard punch. You know, it does 7-1 with the Mastery, and considering this is mostly a camp level 1 deck, we do get to the D bracket in our top 2 stages. but mostly, especially with Hidden Power Drill in play, we're kind of weak. So this flat damage attack, 7 and 1's really strong. Plus its effect, stopping cards like Unleashed, Android 13 level 2, Blue Dominance, things like that. It's like Wall Breaker, but for advanced effects. It's a great card. Sinister Choke at 3 copies. This deck has a little bit difficulty doing critical damage. It also, and because of that, it's kind of weak to Dragon Ball decks, so you kind of have to play Sinister Choke at 3 copies. I'll Dig Your Grave, a lot of people ask me, Black Beatdown, do you need I'll Dig Your Grave? Yes, in my opinion, especially in this deck, you need I'll Dig Your Grave. Cards like Dashing Sword Attack, Black Sword Attack, they're not hitting for that much damage, so you want to make sure that damage is unpreventable, and if you can open up with I'll Dig Your Grave and chain Dashing Sword Attack in a single combat, you can literally kill your opponent in that combat. Heroic Dashing Punch at 2 and Wall Breaker at 2. My Wall Breaker is actually signed by Tiffany Vollmer, so I actually met her at Philly ARG where I top cut and she signed my cards for free. So this is actually our main anger tech in the deck. Heroic Dashing Punch is spectacular. It does 6 and 1 with the mastery and makes your opponent skip and gains you an anger. Banish, it's like every single bit of the text on this card is amazing for this deck. And because this hit effect is so great, you'll be able to bait out blocks all day for your Black Defensive Burst, for your Dashing Sword Attack. Just simply play the card and just state what it does for your opponent. They'll block it usually. And Black Refusal at 3 copies. This card is so good in this deck because you have free discard fodder for with the level 1. So you get free freestyle drills. So you're always going to have things in play to pitch for the Black Refusal. So, and setups are some of the strongest, strongest abilities in the game. You got Red Blaze, you got Dragon Radar, Namekian Growth. There are some really strong setups in the game right now, and, I played around with the number of copies of Black Refusal in my deck. I had it at 2, and I bumped it back up to 3 because I actually lost one of my, the top 16 match at Philly ARG, I lost to Orange Yamcha because I only ran 2 copies of Refusal. If I had 3, it could have been a different game. But so right now, this card is sitting at 3 copies. So that's it for the attacks. So now let's go over the events and blocks. So these are the events and blocks that we're working with. This is an extremely physical-based meta, I guess you could say. There are several energy decks that are viable in the meta, but I would say at least you can conservatively say that 50% of the meta is going to be Brawly and Android 13. So in that, Black Delay has just seen a huge jump in play, a huge jump in power. Stopping a personality power physical block with this card is basically a free discard. And I didn't run it originally, but after just playing 1 or 2 games, I immediately dropped Knee Catch straight up for 3 copies of Black Delay. I've never gone back. It's a great card. Black Finger Block at 3 copies. We have 6 physical attacks that actually cost stages. So we do need some stage gain in here, so the 3 stages on Finger Block is very valuable. 2 Black Resistance. Like I said before, we do have a little bit of anger in here. Not too much, but this is some of it, but mainly it's in here for the 3 endurance. You can see I play less energy blocks than I do physical because I do physical damage, stage damage, and I do have Hidden Power Drill also to limit my opponent's stages, so I should be taking less energy damage, although I do still have, 5 energy blocks. And the Black Swipe, pretty standard, probably one of the best energy blocks in the game, across all styles, just amazing. Can't really go wrong with it. So you can see I actually play a lot of blocks in this deck. What is that, 12 blocks? Probably more blocks than I've played in other Black Trunks decks or any other Black Trunks deck. Mainly because the level 1, again, you're going to be getting free drills. So you're going to be getting Aggressive Sword Drill, which gets you attacks into your hand. So because of that, you can kind of afford, because you have the guaranteed attack, you can kind of afford to play more blocks because you want blocks in your hand because you're tutoring out attacks. So you have like an even level of attack and defense. The only event that we play in the deck, and this is by design, the only event that we play besides Time is a Warrior's Tool is Black Reflection. Just because it is so damn amazing. Because it does whatever you need it to. And again, it's so good in the blue matchup for Blue Terror or Blue Betrayal. You know, so good in the orange matchup for Orange Stare Down. The possibilities are endless. It's a great card, especially with a personality that has a name card that banishes 6 cards. So again, this is by design. We don't run Confrontation. We don't run Sphere. A lot of people are playing Events. And a lot of people are playing Unleashed. And because of that, Sphere is becoming a serious issue. So a way for you to counter that, especially in aggressive decks, is to not play Events. So make your opponent's Spheres useless. People, you know, some competitive players out there say you need Spheres in a deck. I disagree. You can definitely design your deck to run without Spheres and work better without Spheres. And this would be a case where I would say that would be true. So now let's go over the planning cards. So these are the planning cards that we're going to be working with. You can see we play a lot of planning in this deck. We do play 5 drills. And they're all freestyle drills. So, and again, the main reason for this, I'm going to keep saying, this is a Camp Level 1 deck. So chances are you're not going to be leaving this level, really. So these drills are going to be just the way that you control the game. You know, aggressive sword drill is just spectacular. And we kind of went over this before. You know, your named attacks cannot have their damage prevented. So that Trunks Sword Slash can actually deal critical damage quite often with this card. Definitely don't forget that. And then, of course, you know, it allows you to tutor a sword card from your life deck into your hand if you haven't searched your life deck. So you can't use 2 of these. And you can't use it after you use your Trunks power. So you can't like bring it out and then tutor in the same turn. But we do play this at 2 copies because chances are they're going to banish or discard the first one. You want that second copy to make sure you're going to use this drill at least once or twice a game. So Hidden Power Drill is in this deck mainly because there are a ton of personalities out there that are much stronger than Trunks, and this kind of curbs them and brings them back down to Trunks' level. This is definitely a harder card to use, but you know, if you have a little bit of experience using this card, you can see its power. I can't even tell you how many times, you know, I've been at 0 and my opponent has been at 10 power stages, or my opponent has been about to level with anger or something like that. I bring out Hidden Power Drill, gain stages for myself, lower the opponent's stages, and then really just cap them out when they level so they're not like gaining back 10 stages on me. Really great card, but a selectively good card. Definitely don't bring this drill out when you're facing like Roshi or someone really weak, because you're only hurting yourself ultimately. You know, Trunks is only a B at 5 above 0, so you're losing 2 brackets of damage by bringing this drill in play. Only bring this drill out when you're facing someone strong like Brawly, 13, Cooler, Cell, and personalities like that. Quickness Drill was kind of a last minute add in this deck at Philly ARG. I threw it in minutes before the tournament started, and all day it showed me the power of it. You know, I was able to cycle Black Defensive Burst a few more times in the tournament. I was able to get back Time as a Warrior's Tool a few times. So just, you know, having this in your deck and having that option of always being able to draw the bottom card of your discard pile, you know, kind of like Hidden Power Drill, a little bit difficult to use, but, you know, just play a few games with it and, you know, just be aware of the bottom card in your discard pile. Be aware when you're discarding, and you'll see the power of it and you'll see its use. A Lookout Drill is just one of those drills that it's just straight money. Like in certain matchups, this card will save you 5 to 10 damage. It'll save you the game. Dragon Ball 7 is one of the most, like, toxic, freaking cancerous cards to bring out late game, and I hate it sometimes. But if you have Lookout Drill in play, you almost barely notice the Dragon Ball 7. And, you know, just bring it out against Namekian, bring it out against Black, and just, you know, especially Black Krillin, stop all those corruption and capture abilities against you. Great card. Definitely never leaving this deck. Black Declaration is at 2 copies. Now, this card is not in here for setups and drills. We have 3 refusals. We have the Black Sword attacks. So this card is in here for allies like Chi-Chi and Goldo, and also Dragon Balls. Again, I said earlier this deck's a little bit weak to Dragon Balls. So being able to shuffle in ball 6 or just being able to shuffle in a Dragon Ball to slow the opponent Dragon Ball victory is very useful. But it's only 2 copies because we don't want to, bog down the deck too much. 2 VTPs, pretty standard, especially for like a mid-range control deck, aggressive control, so pretty standard there. I've had several people ask me, DDA, you should really drop down Black Searching Technique down to 2 copies. You don't need all 3 copies. No, absolutely not. This card is spectacular. It will win you the 13 matchup if you bring it out first turn, enter, banish 15 and 14 ally, or banish 2 impenetrable defenses, depending on how you're feeling. Since this deck doesn't run spheres or confrontations, my first target with this card all day is Time as a Warrior's Tool. It's the first target I go for. I don't want them using it. I don't want them cycling in against me. I just target that, get it out of the game, and not worry about it. It also has great synergy with Black Reflection. Facing blue deck, banish Blue Terror, and then just go to town by, grabbing whatever you need. So that's it for the deck list, guys. So now let's go over the bench cards. So these are the current bench cards that I'm considering for this deck, listed in order that I would probably add them. So Devastating Blow, like I said earlier, the Anger tech is a problem for this deck, and Wall Breaker is sometimes less than useful in the red matchup, and just red seems to be everywhere right now. So Devastating Blow offers a pretty solid anger tech, gives me a little bit of anger, as well as some additional targeted banishing. Like, you can't go wrong with more banishing, so really good card. I've considered dropping Wall Breaker for this, or just straight adding this as extra anger tech into the deck, so I'd consider that. Along with anger tech being a problem, so are allies, and 13 is probably one of the weaker matchups this deck has. I don't remember the last time this deck lost to Brawly. It has a really strong Brawly matchup, but 13 always seems to fall short because of 15 ally banishing both Arm Breaker, Wall Breaker, and all of your freestyle drills. 15 ally just sucks for this deck. It's almost a hard counter to the whole deck. So adding Tug of War, adding a Tug of War or 2 may help the deck out. It may solve that issue with 13. Completely, altogether, I'm not sure. But, the deck space is pretty tight. But I'd consider adding 1 or 2 copies of Tug of War in. Just to talk about Confrontation, like I said, it's by design this deck doesn't run that many events. But Confrontation is one of those cards that it's hard to not run and it's hard to justify against. So I'm going to keep it on the bench here. Just, I won't knock anyone for playing Confrontation in their deck. It's a great card, countered, just take out their best card in their hand, take out that Unleashed, etc., etc. So now let's talk about the general strategy and how you're going to win with this deck. So I have a lot of organized play experience with this deck, under my belt with this guy now. With this specific deck, I have a 5-3, a 6-2, and a top 16. I've been just consistently performing with this deck. It definitely is strong. So please, I encourage you guys to pick up Trunks amongst the top cut at Philly, the Philly Championship. I can't remember who came up to me, but someone came up to me and they asked me, they were like, hey DDA, how many matches did you win today because the opponent didn't know what Trunks level 1 did? They won the die roll against you, entered on you. You got to tutor out aggressive sword drill, lasted combat, and then you punished them by entering next turn against them to get a free card advantage. And actually that happened about twice in that tournament. So people don't expect you to have such a good early game with Trunks. They're used to the other levels of Trunks that are very much weaker in the early game, but this guy is strong. You no longer have a weak early game with this Trunks. You're going to get out this drill pretty much like 95% of the time. You're going to get this drill. The only other option I would say would be Lookout Drill, just in like a black matchup, maybe, but still like 95% of the time you're going to get this drill. Out there, anyone wondering why this deck doesn't have Black Smoothness Drill in it is because we have such a good early game. after you tutor out this aggressive sword drill, you're pretty much going to want to go aggressive 24/7, constantly enter on the opponent. I played Smoothness Drill in this deck for a while, and I never found that I was generating the card advantage of Smoothness. You actually have to pass in order to get that card advantage of Smoothness. This deck rarely ever passes, so after kind of the first combat, it rarely passes. Sometimes you want to wait a little bit to enter combat. You know, you're a mid-range deck, which means, you know, combat 2, 3, and 4 is where you're going to want to seal the game. So you can take some time to get into that first combat. We don't see the power of Trunks in the first combat because, you know, this card can only be used if you haven't searched your life deck. And that's okay. So you can play, you don't necessarily want to play a slow game, early game, but you want to selectively enter combat. Judge based on your opponent. If you're facing a control deck, just enter. You know, facing Roshi. Depending on what you're facing, you may want to just go aggressive, get the drill out so you can start running the train early. But if you're facing some of this, you know, the standards that we're seeing in the meta, like Brawly 13, you can play a little bit of a slower game, you know, wait for them to enter on you, and then start going aggressive. So pretty much with your aggressive sword drill, you're going to want to tutor out a number of things. You kind of want to wait to get the dashing sword. You don't want to get the dashing sword right away. You want to wait until you have the cards in your discard pile, have the sword cards in your discard pile. You want to wait until you've baited out some of their blocks, you've black searching techniqued some of their blocks, you've done maybe a black Enraged assault and, you know, targeted some of their blocks. Just really, you want to focus their blocks with your banishing abilities overall and just make sure this card hits. A game that you're hitting this card is a game you're going to win. So more often than not, the cards early game, like in the second or third combat, I'm going to tutor out one of these guys. If they have a discard pile, usually I'll tutor out this just to get rid of their discard pile. Or if I just want a bread and butter ability, if I want to get a sword card in my discard pile to use later, I'll just get this and throw this out. Now, I mentioned earlier this does gain anger, so you can combo with this, you know, to gain 2 or 3 anger. In some games and actually level off of this. Great when you do that. And the thing to not forget with this guy is that whenever you play a card with sword in the title, Rejuvenate 1, do not forget that. That is a huge part of this ability. In fact, I would argue that is an equal in power to his power of getting a freestyle drill. You will put between 5 and 10 cards back into your life deck every game with that power. Every time, okay? And it also allows you to have some crazy combos. So like, let's say you're facing Brawly, okay? So you open up with Black Defensive Burst. Let's say it hits. Awesome. Your opponent basically can't do anything for the remainder of the combat. Okay, you just Black Defensive Bursted. It's on the top of your discard pile. I'm gonna play my Black Sword attack, Rejuvenate 1. Oh, let me put my Black Defensive Burst on the bottom of my discard pile. And then you may be thinking, well, it's on the bottom. That's not going to help you. But you have 2 abilities pretty much guaranteed. One is definitely guaranteed. But you have 2 abilities that can shuffle your life deck. So you can shuffle your life deck now. You've just evenly distributed all the cards you just rejuvenated. Your Black Defensive Burst back into your life deck. Guys, I've done Black Defensive Burst against Brawly 4 and 5 times in a single game. You know, Brawly players, they say, well, I hold blocks for Defensive Burst. Great. You know, you may block my first one, but you're not blocking my second, third, fourth one. You're not going to block them all. So they're coming at you, fury. So you're going to want to choose select cards to rejuvenate. That's usually what I try to do. You know, I'll hold sword cards in my hand until a card comes up that I want to rejuvenate or things like that. You know, just really think about the cards that you're playing and the order that you're playing them in. It's important to note that it's whenever you play a card, so it's actually before any immediate effects. So and hit effects. So for example, if your only sword card is on the top of your discard pile, you play Dashing Sword, you'll actually have to rejuvenate this before the hit effect goes off and you get it from your discard pile. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to chain abilities and things like that. So really fun deck to play, guys. This deck has a lot of options. You'll find out when you're playing it. A lot of options. You know, you have all those freestyle drills in your deck to choose from. You know, always keep in mind, like I said before, the bottom of your discard pile If you can open up with Black Defensive Burst against Brawly, you know, now it's on the bottom of your discard pile. Even if you don't rejuvenate, you can get it with Quickness Drill. You know, always keep in mind you have Hidden Power Drill in your deck to gain stages with. And just play around with the different combos you can do with this deck. You know, this deck runs a lot of hit effects. You know, it runs the Aggressive Sword. It runs the Enraged Assault, the Dashing Sword Attack, the Defensive Burst, the Dashing Punch, the Chin Kick. So, like, there's a lot of hit effects in this deck. And it's okay. Hit effects are okay when they massively shift the game. And you can definitely say that these 3 hit effects and Dashing Punch as well will massively shift the game in your favor. And if you're performing multiple cards with multiple hit effects, you know, at least 2 of them are going to hit, at least 1 of them is going to hit, so you know that you're going to get these effects. Just learn to sequence, guys, learn to perform your attacks in the correct order, and win tournaments with this Black Sword deck.